So hello everybody. Thanks for receiving me in your community. I'm really excited to be here and well, first of all, congratulations for putting up such a great project together of so many groups and so many initiatives and yeah, it's really something we do need in these times. And so first of all, thank you. And then to talk to you a little bit about me. So I'm an entrepreneur actually. So I'm an economist. So my full-time job is a lending business, which I run in Mexico. It's almost 15 years I've been doing this. So it's a public company. So I started the business from zero. It was a project to finance small and medium businesses in Mexico to get funding. So it's a business about understanding entrepreneurs, getting funds from development banks, from international funds, from venture capital, family offices, so different source of funding, and we create our own decision algorithms, and we have the team to deploy those resources to companies which they won't access banks normally, or they need a better service or a more flexible product. So that's what I do. So I'm a businessman, so I'm oriented into economics, into incentives, into all of that. But I'm also, I used to study a lot. So I'm also a PhD because in parallel to my entrepreneurial career, so I have done a master's degree in finance, and then I did a PhD also on public policy. So all of that, I have written some books about economics, about financial inclusion, so about remittances and all that stuff. And this is the first time actually I have used all my financial background to get into Asbara. I'm a pretty active Jew as well, so I've worked in lots of Jewish organizations, named Adasa International Hospital, Keren Ayesod. I've worked for the Bitachon forces in Mexico in different aspects. I've been into Maccabia. I've been into the Roy. I'm a member of the Roy Foundation, which is a Schusterman Foundation international brand. So I'm part of a lot of international organization and things like that. So I decided to put up together all my finance to try to put my financial knowledge into the conflict. So this book, it's an effort to write a simple guide, because the book is written simply to help people understand it, easily. And it's a new way of looking into the conflict, which adds on to a new aspect of the debate, which on my point of view is not explored, which is economic incentives. So beyond ideology, beyond religion, beyond whatever you like, political forces and politicians, whatever. So there's an economic structure that also is perpetuating the conflict, and we need to unmask it, and we need to talk about it widely, and teach other people to what's going on. So as I have half an hour, I will try to pass the slides fast. I mean, some of them you already know, because you're Israelis and Jews, and so there's no need to get deep in some numbers, but I will get into it. So this is the cover of the book, which is written in English and in Spanish. So because my goal is to really try to make it widely available. So this is it. And well, so why I decided to write this book? Because it questions the traditional narrative of terrorism. It exposes economic incentives as a driving force behind the conflict, and it challenges also the role of Western institutions in its financing. So terrorism as a business model, it's a well-structured and profitable industry that includes salaries, bonuses, and rewards. It also benefits a small elite at the expense of the people. So who's funding this structure? It's a global financial network headed by UN agencies, Western governments, and NGOs. And so let's start talking about it to explore the topic a little bit. So, I mean, all of you are aware of UNRWA and their disastrous role in Gaza Strip and all, but I'm not sure if you knew that 25% of all UN employees are Palestinians from Gaza. 25% of the total payroll of the UN as a general organization, that is General Assembly, UNICEF, FAO, I mean, the whole organization, which has roughly 120,000 employees, and 30,000 is the number of employees we have for UNRWA. So if you make the numbers, it's almost 25% of the total payroll. So it means that 1 out of 4 people are Gazans. That's the main component of the UN as an organization, and we should be talking about this. Okay, so this is the fact. So 1 in every 4 UN staff is a Gazan. And well, I mean, already the obvious, which you probably already know, the comparison between the UNRWA and the other refugees agency, which is not the UNRWA, which one attends and focuses only in Gaza, and you have another one for the rest of the world, which is almost 15 times the number of refugees, but the number of employees dedicated to the people. I mean, you have 17,000 people for almost 75 million refugees around the world, and you have double up the staff for the 5 million of Gaza, of Palestinians attended inside the state of Israel. And you have double the double budget. So you have doubled your staff, you have double your budget to attend a population which is roughly less, it's like 7% of the total number of refugees around the world. So there's also a bias. And well, so, okay, so you have the biggest UN agency with most of employees, with the highest salary. We will go now into the salaries on the people, and also with the biggest budget per person. So what are you doing with that budget? And well, we have this video of what happens into UN schools.
ناس بحب فلسطين بيحاربوا وبتحرق دمهم عشان فلسطين. أنا بتعذبهم بالحرب، بتعذبهم. وقلنا يعني فلسطين والأرض كلها لأنهم بسبب كذبهم وانتهاكاتهم إنهم يقولون إنه الهيكل تحت المسجد الأقصى، ولا مرة إنه يكون الهيكل تحت المسجد الأقصى. أقرأ اليهود. بعلمونا إن الصهيونية هم أعدائنا، وهم أهم شيء لازم يسووا فيهم عملية. يعني إنهم بيعلمونا بالمدرسة إنهم إرهابيين بيحكوا لنا عن اليهود إنهم هدول مش مناح وهدول بقتلوا قاعدين بشبابنا، بيحكوا لنا.
Sorry. Well, I by accident put out the video, but well, you get the point. So the money, and this is an interesting video. I only have one video actually in my presentation, which this is it, because it is a combination of 7 UNRWA schools around Israel, in Jerusalem, different territories, in different parts of the country, and that's where the money is going to. So the UN, it's the main responsible for indoctrinating in this way the kids, besides all the terrorists we already know. But this gets more interesting. The officials and the UN government workers get a monthly salary between $3,000 and $4,000 US dollars a month. So they make $4,000 a month, which that makes the highest salary of all humanitarian organizations in the world. So the UN staff working for UNRWA are the best paid social workers in the world. They have one of the highest salaries, so they're really well-paid people, alongside also government officials, which we will see later that they also get their money from Western countries. And so, not only that, I mean, if you take an average between government officials and UN officials, as I say, they make an average of between $3,000 and $4,000 a month. So that makes an average, more or less, ponderated average of 3,500,000 US dollars a month. And that's it. When you talk about GDP per capita, that means the quantity of money you get in a year. That makes the Gaza and West Bank officials the highest paid job in all the region, and doubling up Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Turkey, Lebanon, Russia, the Balkans, South America, all the Middle East, of course, which it's roughly 800 a year, 800 also a year, so it's less than 1,000. They have almost 4,000 when you talk about the Middle East. More than Africa, of course, South Africa, more than Jordan, Egypt, and Syria. So this is it. This what means is that being a part of UN staff is the better and the most well-paid job in the entire region. And when you compare with the GDP of most parts of the world, of course, taking out North America and United States and rich countries, but if you live in the Middle East or close to it, because you live in Africa maybe, or you live in Russia or the Balkans, I mean, if you live in the Azor, in the area, I mean, working for the UN, it's a very good deal. I mean, you'll get one of the highest salaries in the world. And not only that, of course, UNRWA claims, and that's the perverse incentives, as you have more refugees in this conflict, then the organization needs more staff and needs more money per refugee and per staffer. So that's why this is the only differentiated law in the world where the refugee status is inherit. I mean, we know you can inherit your status of refugee if you're a Palestinian, and that's the only case in the world you can do it. No other country has that law enforced, but the Palestinians do. And besides the political issue, and we already know that it's a complex situation. Think about it in terms of money. It means more money because you need more money to attend to, more money per person to wait to, and you need more people. So you need 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people with really high salaries. And that's how the UNRWA, their budget from the 1950s to the year 2020, look how crazy their budget has grown from zero that the agency started to almost 18,000 millions of US dollars, which it's 1.8 billion. Because I keep thinking in Spanish terms, which is different the way of expressing numbers, but it's 1.8 billion. So it's crazy. I mean, that kind of money, it's compared to the entire income of Mexico selling oil to the rest of the world, for example, which has one of the top 3 oil companies in the world. So what Mexico sells in oil to the rest of the world, one of the main resources in world in oil, it's compared to what the UN sends into Gaza to the Palestinians as aid, which clearly doesn't go to the people. It goes to their salaries because they're the best paid people in the world and in the region. So that's why the UNRWA doesn't aim to solve the refugee problem, because its existence depends on the problem staying unsolved. I mean, you can understand the paradox from an economic point of view. Why would they solve the problem if the more complex gets a problem, they get more money, more staff, and more salary? But the crazy thing is who finances all these crazy incentives? And the answer is the United States, Europe mainly. So it's the United States, it's the European Union, it's Germany, it's the UK, it's Sweden, and it's Canada. So all this crazy structure of the UN with perverse incentives that goes to their salaries or to schools that indoctrinate people to hate Israel is financed by the Western countries, mainly. So this is another comparison, so we can have another perspective of the agencies, which I already told you about the UNICEF, the Kids Organization, the World Food Program, which is a lamentation of the entire continent of Africa, for example. So it has no comparison of the quantity of staff that UNRWA has alone. Of course, 25% of their payroll are Gazans. And that this thing you already know, not only that, they actively participate as part of the terrorist attacks. So they're leaders of the enemies in Lebanon and inside Israel. And UNRWA, because all this is so clear, their main speech is to deny it. So we had no idea some of our employees were terrorists. We had no idea. Then on February 2024, we had no idea that Hamas built tunnels under our main headquarters. We had no idea that Hamas stored weapons and rockets into our schools. In January 2005, we had no idea that Hamas held hostages inside our installations, basically. Of course, they're denying it because you already saw what their schools are about. And the other thing we already know, it's not only what happens in the schools, but the coordination. I mean, nowadays with all the food shortages, it's clear that the UN it's boycotting. I mean, what's happening today with all the accusation of famine and stuff like that? I mean, beyond the political debate, one fact is that there was a new organization with US-Israel collaboration that was trying to substitute the UN and Hamas into delivering food into Gaza. And what the UN did was boycotting that effort. So leaving the stockpiles of food to rot in the sun and refusing to distribute the food. Why? Because you're wresting power, you're taking away power from UNRWA, which they are used to have the monopoly of collaborating with Hamas, which we have plenty of evidence. The IDF has tons of evidence of collaboration to, give arms, to deliver food, and to permit Hamas being able to do all this. So this is also an economic drive for them. So if they're substituted for a more efficient actor, then they'll, be less necessary and they'll have less money. So they cannot let that happen. So that's why they orchestrated all this famine accusation to tell people, okay, so Israel and the US tried to substitute us in delivering food. So this brought a disaster. So give back all the money and all the power to the UN, which collaborates with terrorists again. Well, this is a slide I put in Mexico, which it's not relevant here, about Mexico ignoring a murdered Mexican and his girlfriend, which actually was famous, Shani Luke. She was the girlfriend of the only Mexican hostage, non-Jewish Mexican hostage that was killed, and he was found beneath UN installations. So I'm telling Mexican governments, okay, so your citizen, which was non-Jewish, was killed, tortured inside a UN installation, and the price of his girlfriend being raped made an award that's a picture of the year with, Associated Press and all that stuff. But there's another component to it. So there's the UN, but besides the UN, there's other economic incentives, which I called the government budgets and foreign aid and terrorism and the Western paradox. And also what I found is that governments have budgets in their structure to deliver directly to the Palestinian governments. This means Hamas and the Palestinian authorities. So as part of, the international efforts governments do, they send money to Palestinian governments besides the UN. So who's financing Hamas and the Palestinian Authority? So the European Union, 34%. The US, again, the government gives as a yearly part of their budget also. NGOs, and then the Arab states, also the United Nations. Besides UNRWA, they have other parts that send money directly to governments. And what's interesting here is that money to Palestinians brought by Iran, Qatar, and Turkey, which are, our clear enemies, they make together less than 10% of the money sent to Palestinian governments. So it turns out that the biggest sponsors of this kind of policy are the UN and international institutions and are the Western governments. And the money coming from Qatar and Iran and Turkey, it doesn't go to the Palestinians, not the people and not the government. So where is their money actually going? I mean, they're selling arms and making business, but they're not giving their money for free to the Palestinians because that's already taken care of by European Union and the US, which they give 80% of the budget comes from Western governments and NGOs. So where's Iran and Qatar money going to? To the West, to the press and to the schools, because they don't need to send their money to Palestinian territories because that's the West doing for them. So their money is being sent to American universities. So, we kind of see how the loop is starting to close. So they get free money from the UN with perverse incentives. They also get free money from Western governments, which they don't need to give any accountability. So how are you spending their money? All of it in terrorism. That's what Hamas does. That's what Palestinian Authority. So I put this graphic to put it visually clear. The world average of military spending compared with their military spending. And because they'll keep, governments usually have accountability to their citizens. So they have to build roads, they have to build hospitals, they have to build pipelines, water, whatever. But they don't, because their money doesn't come from Gazans tax. I mean, maybe a very little part of it, but because their money comes from Western governments with no accountability, so that's why they use it for terrorism, terrorist tunnels, for arms, and they don't build their own power plants, so their electricity is dependent on Israel. They don't build civil shelters. Why? And they don't build basic services. I mean, we have seen all these pictures of them taking the water pipelines to make more rockets. Of course, I mean, who's going to blame them? They will keep receiving money. And the interesting thing is that as the conflict grows more severe, they'll get more money, because now they'll get emergency assistance from those same Western governments. So beside the yearly budget, they'll have additional budget. But there's a third component of this economic dilemma or economic trap, and it's also that terrorism, it's also a form of socialism, a social policy, and it can become a family business. Maybe some of you have heard of what's coming now, but if not, you'll hear it on detail. So as a company works, so you have KPIs and you have rewards for selling Coca-Colas or for selling some kind of products, right? Here, you also get bonuses and you get financial rewards, but the rewards, of course, come as incentives for assassinating Jews. So if you attempt to murder a Jew, you'll get 10 grand. And if you're only for the attempt, I mean, you can fail, but you will get the grant anyway. And if you're successful, that means you did murder a Jew, you'll get an apartment. Also, if the martyr dies, I mean, you kill him, but the martyr died as well, then he'll get an additional bonus and a lifetime pension for the family. So he'll get a bonus of $1,500, and the family will get $350 per month. But if he got unlucky, well, or lucky, if you put it in this point of view, and he was jailed, then the more severe is his time in jail, their family will get more money, which can come from 600 to 2,000 USD a month. So if you're a prisoner, sentences to 5 to 10 years, you'll get 600 a month. But if you're sentenced to 10 to 20 years, you'll get 1,000 a month. And if you got sentences for more than 20 years and so on until life sentence, that you'll get 2,000 a month. So that's when you start to understand the concept of disposable children, which, besides the crazy thing, if you think of it ideologically, that they're willing, to send their kids to explode and to assassinate, to die, it's not only because they're crazy, it's because it's a great family business. If you have a lot of kids and you send 2 of them to kill Jews, then if you have one of them in jail and one of them tried to kill a Jew and was successful, then you as a family, you'll get bonuses, you'll get a residential apartment, and you can get up to 2,000 USD a month. So, I mean, of course, they will glorify and they will perpetuate the system because it's profitable to them. And not only that, I mean, as we saw that the average quantity of USD that Gazans get a month is less than 200 USD, it's 180. If they get 2,000 for having a relative in jail, so they're getting, I mean, it's crazy. They're getting 10 times or 20 times more than the average Gazan. So it's the best paid job in the Palestinian society is to become a terrorist. It's the best and the wellest paid job. I don't know if I said it correctly, but it's the best job. I mean, not only in Gaza, in the entire region, in the entire Middle East. So, of course, it's a profitable business, and that this is why it's also a social policy of subsidize. With the thing you have to do, I mean, you see this in other socialist countries, which they get subsidized for protesting for the government or for living in certain areas, or they have to change some chips, political chips. Here, what you have to do is kill Jews. So if you kill Jews, you'll get a lot of money and pensions, and the more radical you are, the more money you'll get. And this is official, this is public information, by the way. I mean, Palestinians don't hide this. I mean, this is part of one of the biggest spendings on their GDP. Besides the arms and the tunnels and all that stuff, it's getting money to terrorist families. And of course, infrastructure, which also I like to put it inside the book, matters into perspective, which Gaza has become 15 times its size. So you have 15 times Gaza, because the size of Gaza is 41 kilometers. So you can not even run a whole marathon inside of Gaza. But you have 600 square meters of kilometers of tunnels. So they multiplied their city 15 times, and 14 of those 15 Gaza cities are terrorist cities, which all they have is tunnels and weapons and strategies to destroy the Jewish state. And besides all the capabilities they have with missiles, which thousands of missiles, and well, the things you already know from Yemen, from Syria, from Lebanon, and all this strategy, which also obviously requires money and investments, and they have thousands of it. And that's why, because once you understand it's a social policy and it's a financial incentive, then it's not easy, it's not hard to guess why there's so many terror attacks, because you get rewarded, you get apartments, you get money. So that's why in 2024, you got more than 500 terrorist attacks besides October 7. I mean, I'm talking about the next year. You had 500 terrorist attacks, which don't make the media because they're shootings. I mean, we hear some of them, of shooting cars, of ramming attacks, of just people killing, stabbing people, 41 stabbing attacks, 89 explosive attacks. I mean, you have all these kinds of attacks because they're a family business. So they'll keep coming. And that's why 82% of the people jailed and then liberated by any kind of agreement or whatever, in exchange, 82% of the jail terrorists will come back to their activity because they don't have anything to lose. On the contrary. So if they committed a successful attack, they'll get rewarded. And if they are caught again and brought back to jail, they also will get a lot of money through their family that will bring them monthly salaries. So for them, being in jail is profitable, and come again to attack Jews is profitable. So why the hell would they be rehabilitated and come out of jail to do an honest job? I mean, they have zero incentive to do that. So that's why it's so high, the reincidence rate, because no matter how bad they were treated in jail, for them, it's a business. And well, besides all of this, I'm sure you already know. I'm about to finish to take some questions. It's the last slides. So this you already know. So Arafat, Abbas, Ismail Haniyeh, I mean, they're proven accounts. I mean, Arafat had penthouses in New York, and there was this edition of Forbes naming the most rich leaders of Taref business in the world, and Arafat made the list. And well, we all know the leaders, besides they have hundreds of millions of dollars in accounts in different parts of the world. And well, I've started to see raising hands, but I'm trying to stick to this first half an hour. I'm about to finish in 4 minutes, and then I'll take all the questions. So, I mean, how is this possible? I mean, if this is public information, if this is available to anyone, I mean, how is this possible? And the answer, it's a concept I created called ideological laundering. This comes from an economic concept called money laundering. What's money laundering? So clean money, you get it into the system. I mean, rotten money, you get it into a system and you figure out to make it clean. So that's what's happening exactly with this ideology. So you have all this perverse, rotten ideology and of death and murders and social policy based on murdering Jews, and you make it and put it into the Western media and academia, and then you'll get it clean. So you clean your ideology, and you will have the legitimization and victimization of the terrorist doctrine. So this is what happens. Suddenly, the most radical countries and movements and terrorist movements, they have now the full support of the international press, the New York Times, the Associated Press, CNN, but also from multilateral institutions. It's not only the press, it's also the Red Cross that refuses and has refused from the beginning to visit the hostages. They don't care. They maybe transport arms. That's what they do. Also, what's happened with the International Court of Justice being clearly biased in attacking Israel. That's what happened in American universities, and that's what happened in the UN, which we analyze in detail. So it's international institutions, it's the press, and it's a full in the entire academia. So that's why they get away to keep the system going. And well, that's we already know. Okay, so then if Qatar is not giving the money to the Palestinian people, the poorer people, where is their money going? Well, making World Cups, making automobile competitions, and financing, of course, American universities. Which this you already know. Just put some detail in the book and here. This is not only the budget, it's also special programs, it's bringing professors. And it's all part of this ideological laundering. So what you have, it's the terrorism. It's not only a system of attacking Jewish people, but it's a system it gets supported and perpetuated by UN employees because they're the best paid people in the region. It's supported by enriched terrorist leaders and elites, because if you work for the government or work for UN, you'll have the best paid job in the region. So your interest is to keep the system going like that. Also, terrorism functions as a social subsidy policy, which it's very important to understand that many families live out of this. So it's profitable to them to have a lot of children and send some of them to work for this policy because they'll get rewarded. It's very important to understand that the conflict escalation means more money. Then it all gets put through, and nobody talks about this because this concept of ideological laundering, and the anti-Jewish press that keeps feeding the system, and it might lead even to a unilateral recognition of the Palestinian state, which is the point where we're heading right now. So basically, this is it. Two last slides. The region-based paid career, the point I've been making through the presentation. The salary of pro-terrorism UN officials, it's higher than the GDP per capita in the entire region. The main donors to the terrorist industries are Western countries and government, which also legitimize their narratives. The Westernists, they're the ones giving their money, and they're the ones legitimizing the strategy. And terrorism receives more funding as the crisis worsens, so escalation becomes profitable. And besides, you get economic and political rewards for terror, international and popularity and sympathy. You get funds for reconstruction, you get political recognitions, and it suddenly becomes your path to independence. So what must be done? This is not only about ideology, it's about economics. So cut these incentives. And terrorists persist not because of faith, but because of well-structured incentives. That's another way of looking to the conflict. So what must be done? Fight institutional corruption in the media, NGOs, and multilateral organizations, where we need to start to talk about the conflict of interest and the big corruption inside the UN, and talk about the UN as a corrupt organization, and replace subsidies with economic integration to foster dignity, productivity, and peace. So obviously, as an economist, I see that the only way to make truly a peaceful environment, it's economic integration. So bringing people working together. And this is it.